Hello, and we're at the end of the CZI Congress. This is the end of day 3. As you can hear, there's quite a bit of activity going around. We're not the only ones having Friday drinks. Everybody else is enjoying their drinks and digesting the events of the last 3 days. One of the speakers this afternoon was Nads. I'm not going to try and say your surname,
Please don't try.
but maybe you can say it for the...
Mads Knudsen. And I have 4 names. Mads Ole Fløt Knudsen.
Try that.
You'll get another drink if you can.
I won't even try. And Mads is a very sensible gentleman. He's joined us in the
And he's
Glenmorangie.
drinking the Glenmorangie neat. I love that. He appreciates fine liquor.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I don't miss out on a good drink.
Yes.
So cheers to that.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Nads is an economist who's been working in Rwanda for the last 10 years. And Rwanda's
So
been
international inspiration for you. You're an economist. It's possible to be an economist and
And drink.
interesting
And drink.
Yes.
I'll think about it for a second. No, thank you.
Because he's a TikToker. So boring.
You will live longer than me.
No, he won't.
I continuously tell this
There
chat.
there is absolutely no guarantee that he will. So anyway, Nads has been working in Rwanda for the last decade, doing some interesting economic research. And as you know, we've talked a lot about the Rwandan model in this country over the last couple of years. So, I mean, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and what you've learned.
Yes. Okay, I came to Rwanda as, I guess, the typical white person out of university. And
Oh, by the way, you're the second white person we've ever had on this show.
oh, really?
So I'm not even
So
sure. I'm not even sure that the crew's got.
truly honored.
I don't know if they've got the lighting right.
That's good. It's as good as
We've
it
got
gets.
Tinashe on the show. He's like halfway there.
I'm the token.
No, so I found myself coming right out of grad school in London, and I had a professor who said you should try and apply for this thing called ODI fellowship, where you get to work in a government that actually wants you to work for a couple of years there as an advisor. So that's how I got to Rwanda. The Ministry of Trade and Industry kind of requested my profile. Somehow they saw my picture, very good looking picture. And then they said, okay, let's try out this economist. And within 2 weeks, I found myself being called up at 7 in the morning that now you have to go present to the minister in half an hour. So I found myself in the deep end, starting out in the Rwandan government, where people work extremely hard and long hours. I assume probably the same here in Zimbabwe.
No, don't assume that.
Don't make that
Don't
assumption.
assume that.
Everybody is telling me that though. And,
That's a very generous assumption.
and then I stuck there as an advisor for a year or 2, and then I started my own company, research company in Rwanda, because I discovered that a lot of the research in Rwanda is driven by foreigners coming in and out. So the policymakers are Rwandese, but all the analytics and so on is done by people coming in and out and people in other countries. And I don't think that's a good model for a country. I think that should be done by their own people, because the motto of our company is that social change is not something one group does to another group. It's
That's
has
called
to be-
colonialism.
that is neo-colonialism in a way. And we want to do away with that. We wanted to really create a young generation of young professional Rwandans and give them the opportunity to work on these national strategies and do the research and then move up the ladder and create their own companies and their own
So in
careers.
the last 10 years working with policymakers as an economist, what's the one thing that has shocked you the most?
Shocked me.
Yeah.
I think I worked for a stint in the Danish government as well, actually. And what I find out when you work in policy is that things happen very fast and they happen quite coincidentally. What is the emergent need? You are reacting a lot rather than
Okay. Rather
Planning.
than driving.
rather than
policy.
And this is
planning.
in Denmark and Rwanda.
This is in Denmark and in Rwanda.
All right. So policymakers are always on the back foot.
In my experience, there's so many things going on and so many pressures that they have to respond to.
So there isn't a big brother who's got this all worked out.
I haven't seen him. If you know him, please give me the number.
Well, in North Korea, they have a room
Yeah, maybe.
that has supercomputers that figures out these things. They always get it wrong.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Oh wow! And so I mean, you've been around here a few times. How many
Yes.
times have you been to Zim?
I came to Zim first time in 2017, actually, working with CZI to do some of the one of the policy documents that fit into the Vision 2030 debate and the industrialization policy. So we did a paper together with the Economist Roundtable here. Every Friday, very brilliant people, Zimbabwean researchers, meet and discuss topics.
How come you
In
don't
the
get
I've
CZI.
invited?
never heard of this. So,
You
so
should
Tinashe,
come.
you're not brilliant.
So you're not brilliant.
You're not brilliant.
No, I'm not. You
Okay.
do know
no,
this.
no. Well, maybe you are. I mean, in the literal sense of the word.
What I can say is you should attend these meetings if you're brilliant, because you'll meet other brilliant people there. It was really an eye-opener actually to see, wow, these guys meet every week, think about how to drive this economy forward. And I think that's why CZI is so successful in actually getting their wording and their research into the national policy documents.
Okay. So you've
So
been
when
here.
you
How
think
many?
about-
Sorry. So you've been here 2017, and then.
And then now I was invited.
So this is second.
This
time.
is just second
What's
time.
your impression? 4 years have passed. Better, worse?
I don't-
What do
to
you
be
think?
honest,
Your impression,
I
your
came,
impression.
I
No,
came
living
here
in a-
last night.
What do you think he's going to say?
No, staying in a hotel, ordering
Okay.
drinks. What's your impression?
When I was here, there was no currency. There was bond notes. I remember people. People told me I should bring in real dollars, dollar, and the dollar bills I saw were very old, and people looked hungry because they needed currency for their consumption. They have money in the bank, but no money to spend in real life. Now there is a currency, so there has been
So you
a
think
development.
that's a good thing? Having your own currency?
I think that there is no other way. I don't think you can run an economy with dollars, US dollars alone, because we saw what happened when the rand depreciated a lot. Then the Zimbabwean currency, which was US dollars, were overvalued, and that really hurt the export sector and the economy so badly. So, you're an economist yourself. We talk
Yeah,
about the
but very
optimal.
different. Matt, I've got a question. So, after what's been happening in China, somebody came up with a different metric to just look at, is there a property bubble in China compared to elsewhere in the world? And what they did is they looked at property prices compared to the household income. So when you do that, you find out that China, a lot of cities in China have got a higher ratio than Manhattan, London, world cities. So that was like an indicator that, well, there's something bubbling in China. And then they went further and they looked at African cities just to see what the relationship is like. And guess which country was high on the list with the ratio? It was Rwanda. So what it showed us is your property prices are going up, but household income is trailing behind the property prices. Is that indicative of what's actually on the ground, and what do you think of that ratio?
I think that's a really interesting study. I'd love to see it. First of all, I think that could be quite informing in the Rwandan debate, because I can tell you, everybody in Rwanda, the first thing they invest in is land and property, because they have seen the value of land in Kigali increase by 20% every year.
20%. And household incomes over the last 10 years, how have they been increasing?
But
They have increased, but there's more to the answer. If you,
But I mean,
Yeah.
I was going to come in that
Yeah.
because I lived in Rwanda, as you may know, for all of 6 months. But
so you're now answering for Matt.
no, I'll come in and assist him.
No, he's chipping in. He's not answering.
But one of the key things that you've got to consider with anything to do with land in Rwanda is it's got one of the highest population densities in the world.
exactly.
All right.
So anything to do with land, it will
It's
be
a small country
with a lot of people.
It looks like
Would it be
Lesotho
higher than
on
Manhattan?
the map.
We
Well,
know,
I don't know the
we
ratios,
know
but
that
you know.
Rwanda is the size. I've been told the Midlands province
Yeah.
in Zimbabwe.
It's about
Alright.
it's about
There's
a 20th.
currently-
It's about
there's currently
5%.
13
It's about
million
5% the
people.
size of Zimbabwe. Land mass.
There's currently 13
About the
million
same
people.
population.
We project that will be 26 million people in 30 years,
All right.
and maybe 40 or 50 in 80 years. And at the same time, it's a very high growing economy, constantly urbanizing very quickly.
All right.
So it builds into expectations. Land, people expect incomes to increase, and people are trying to secure the spots on this resource that's going to be very scarce in the future when incomes are going to be much higher. So that's probably some of it.
Somebody's shut Nashe up for once. And I think maybe this is a good place for us to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming by, Nats.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hopefully, we will see you somewhere in this melee
Part of the world.
I very much
later on
hope
this
so.
evening.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
And maybe we'll show you some of the sights and sounds.
That would be interesting. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah,
No, it was
Yeah, no,
it was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
yeah. Thank
What,
you.
what did you think of what these guys drink?
We were just discussing it. It's for smoky whiskey. It's very nice. It's smooth yet smoky. So thanks so much,
smoky.
guys.
Cheers.
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 Yeah. Cheers.
And here we are at the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries annual congress that's being held in Harare this year. We've had the opportunity to interact with various delegates during the course of the day, on camera and off camera, and quite a few interesting discussions have come up. And over the next half hour or so, I'll discuss some of the issues that have come up with Ranga. Do you remember him? He tried to fill in for me when I wasn't there, not very successfully. And
I'm the one who filled in for you, and Ranga was,
just there.
just there.
But I think I did a good job.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Producer, on the other side of the camera.
Thank you guys. It's good to be joining you.
And as usual, we don't really know what we're talking about. The experts are the guys in the conference, and who you may have had the opportunity to see in some previous episodes. So don't take us too seriously.
Don't take us seriously at all.
Gents, one of the things we picked up on the first day of the conference is quite a bit of optimism among the delegates. They seem to think the economy is not as bad as perhaps we've portrayed it over the past couple of seasons. What's your take on that? Maybe Ranga?
Well, maybe just what I'm seeing from reporting companies like on the listed space. There's been quite, I think most of them actually are showing some positive numbers. And I think for a long time my view was maybe it's being driven by the fact that we are coming off a low base. But I guess maybe there's some further investigation that we need to do, maybe to try and see how the industry and the rest of the economy is actually performing outside of the spaces that we occupy. But I only get excited when I start seeing that positive vibe impacting people. Right now, what you see on the streets doesn't speak to that. I mean, just look at how desperate people are to get hold of the $50 that are being dispensed by the Bureau de Change.
But does that mean, is that because their lives are tough, or is it because there's free money?
No. Their lives are tough because now the economy has become predominantly dollarized, and they don't have a way of actually generating US dollars on their own. So this is actually the $50 is actually between them and being able to pay the next rent. So I mean, when you look at the profile of the people that I've seen, it doesn't look like these are people who are trying to take advantage of the situation. They looked more desperate than anything. So I think maybe we are making some progress, but we are not there yet.
So isn't it this idea, I want to be a bit provocative here and say, isn't this idea that when you look at the performance of companies in the trading updates, when you look at the comparisons of current performance to the same time last year when we were under hard lockdown, you can look at it as, you can use the diplomatic speak which you used, which is to say it's coming off a low base. I tend to look at it more harshly and say, when we look at those increases and those improvements in performance, are we not celebrating mediocrity? We should really be doing, we have capacity to do so much better historically.
But Rufaro, before we get to that, so you've got a scenario in which you and Ranga and I feel like our lives have got worse. But the industrialists are saying the economy has improved.
But which
Or the industrialists are feeling positive about the economy. And the numbers we're getting, I mean, and you guys are both very active on the stock market. the numbers coming out of businesses suggest that the economy is doing well. How do you explain that?
No, they don't suggest we're doing well. They suggest we're doing significantly better than last year. And I think that's an important distinction to say, let's look at Delta, let's look at INSCO, let's look at any key indicator for production, for progress, right? Compare it to the same period last year. Are we better off? Absolutely, the numbers are encouraging. But compared to 2016 or 2013 or whichever year you want to choose in our recent history where we were actually doing really well, are we doing better? And I think that's the benchmark that we should be using to assess where we are today.
Yeah, I certainly agree. In fact, we are doing a lot worse if you use that benchmark. I always say maybe in the recent history, our best years were 2009 to 2015, thereabout. So you always want to ask yourself that when you look at the average person, men on the street, as it were, are they looking, are they feeling more excited, bullish about the current scenario than or what it was maybe during that period? I don't think so. I think even for the corporates themselves, they are acknowledging that there's been an improvement from the 2020 level. But I'm not seeing anything that says they are doing so well that maybe even right now, like what we saw when we were transitioning from 2008 to 2009, you could see the growth and the performance through expansions. So these businesses are not really expanding their capacities. They are basically using increasing capacity. So even from
Increasing
the
capacity utilization.
utilization of the capacity which is there.
And even that, when we engaged the CZI president and he was talking about, I think Tinashe brought up a point about capacity utilization, and he was corrected to say that actually the number, the 60% number in terms of utilization is a forecast, it's an aspiration, it's actually not the reality on the ground yet.
Well, he said, as of third quarter, we're looking at 47% capacity utilization.
So where in life is a 47% score something that we should celebrate?
So businesses in this country are using 47% of the capacity they have.
Yeah, and I think at some point, even in the recent past, maybe 10 years ago, some businesses were way above 60, 65. And we are seeing actually the capacity that is there right now, most of that was put in place between 2009 and 2013 when there was like real growth. So right now you don't see that. So it's basically utilizing the capacity which is there. And look, just look around in terms of even the merchandise in the shops and ask yourself or even talk to the people in the retail sector, how much of that is being is local and how much of that is foreign. And even the statistics that are coming from even from the Ministry of Industry and Trade, we are still a net importer for most of those things. And I mean, we are importing crude oil. We are not producing enough. So I think it's good to say we are doing
Less bad.
less bad. I was trying to avoid that term, but yes, we are doing less bad than last year. But we are not even at our recent best years. And look, it's good to be celebrating some small sort of wins, but we should not fool ourselves that we are doing okay. We are not there. You don't feel it. People don't have more money to spend. They disposable incomes, obviously, they are still much smaller, and also even aggregate demand. It's not like it's growing at a much faster pace.
For me, the one cause of optimism is the fact that, particularly with this particular institution and its members, we seem to be in a place where we are willing and able to have honest conversations with the policy makers about what's working and about what's not working. Because one of my personal biggest frustrations with the business community has been the timidity around policy failure, just not putting our hands up and saying, this isn't working, that isn't working. And I think for me, what I find encouraging and cause for optimism is that this particular, they're engaging and they are able to be honest about what is frustrating them, what they don't think is working, in a purely technical, economic, using purely technical and economic language. It's no longer perceived when a business institution like the CZI issues a statement about certain things that aren't working. It's not political anymore. It's just an honest commentary about
The things that affect them.
absolutely. And if we can have that kind of engagement, I'm optimistic that going forward we might actually see some constructive policy changes that are good for everybody.
May I remind you about you eating humble pie a couple of episodes ago?
Yeah, look, I'll concede the point that my every once in a while my optimism around this issue in terms of engagement is tempered by actual behavior on the ground by the policymakers. But I think that if business is completely silent, then there's no hope. Right? If business just ignores bad policy or policy that doesn't work, then we're doomed. But if we have decided that we're going to engage and we're going to point out what's not working, then there's hope at least. Is it a guarantee that there's going to be significant changes in economic policy going forward? No, there's no guarantee. But it's possible when that engagement is happening that somebody might have an epiphany and say, you know what business people are saying around this, it's possible, right?
Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, look, I always want to test it on the basis of things that we're seeing on the ground. I'm not sure whether the chopping and changing that we are seeing in terms of policy is being driven by them responding to submissions from business. But I still think that the tendency to fiddle with things is still there. And it tends to be driven by the pressure that they are feeling or they perceive coming from the people, if I could put it that way, as opposed to maybe what the business actually thinks. I mean, just look at the whole issue around the auction. I think if you speak to most of the business people, I think the preference is for something that is totally different from the auction. And yet what you keep seeing is they're trying to make it work, fiddle with it, make some changes. Whenever things are not working, they have to look for someone to blame or some other way to actually try and skate around it. I think besides engaging, or in addition to engaging, they also need to start taking some of the submissions seriously, especially the ones that are affecting businesses directly. And look, at the end of the day, business people are just interested in one thing, which is to make money. And obviously, when they do that, it means increased revenue for.
But we're socialists. We know that the
Are we?
business
No,
Are we
we are not.
socialists?
they want to make money and they're diametrically
No.
opposed to the poor. The poor will suffer if business makes money.
Okay, look. Well, I guess it depends with the version of socialism that you would want to look at. So, I could say they are interested in seeing private businesses thriving, but at the same time, it has to happen in an environment where the less privileged amongst ourselves, the so-called bottom of the pyramid, is not left exposed. So, but I think the best way of doing that is to make sure that you have got a working economy, you have got a working private sector, so that the majority of the people that you're actually trying to provide safety net to, they're actually able-bodied people that some of them trained people that can actually go out there and work for themselves. So I think
They don't need the safety net.
Yes, you've got a better chance. I mean, like most of
The best safety net
yes.
is not needing a safety net. It's having an economy that is thriving and prosperous in which you don't have people living in poverty.
No. Is that possible?
Well, look at Scandinavia. They do have safety nets, but the vast majority of the population actually doesn't need a safety net because the economy is doing so well that anybody who's able-bodied and educated can have a decent quality of life, gets a good job.
You know, it should be there as an option, but then be able to then say to your people, look, if you then work hard, you can go beyond being catered for by the social structures that are trying to help you. Because, I mean, just look at a simple scenario where fine, everyone can access Pari Hospital if you've got some ailment, but this is, you go to some Bombera kind of ward, right? But then, to the extent that you are willing to
You
pay,
just call it that.
yeah, to the extent that you are willing
Sorry,
to pay.
isn't it? Communist.
No, but this is being realistic. Then, to the extent that you feel like you deserve some luxury, be prepared to pay something, right? It creates a situation where, so no one can say that I don't have access to.
I think comparing Pari to Bombera is being very unfair to Bomberas.
No, but I mean, I get the point you're saying. That look, let's not subsidize those that don't need subsidies.
Exactly.
Why are we subsidizing mealie meal for the whole country when
Certainly you can afford it. Why are you paying for subsidized mealie meal?
Certainly, just looking at specifically at Milomo, you'd say most of the people in the communal areas can afford it because
they grow their own?
They grow their own. So there's definitely no one that you need to actually protect, because the higher you move actually up the food chain,
Well,
the
there's
less
the urban
consumption.
poor.
Yeah. Well, I think the urban poor, you just need to create jobs for them because most of them are able-bodied. So imagine if the industry was pumping and not like what used to happen in the past where every Friday guys will get paid. I mean, they would not need to be government to come and give them cheap meal or an NRZ Zupco or that kind of thing. These are things that people should be able to do on their own. And I think there's actually a better way of doing these things in a way it is that's sustainable. For example, education. So if you are funding basic education for those that can't afford it, you are providing social service, but one that is, it's more like investing, because if then some of those children do well, they'll be able to fend for themselves.
They help us to grow the cake.
Yeah, and
So
also, yes.
that brings up an important question, which is the quality of education.
You read my mind.
Certainly the industry, the private sector is not as engaged as it ought to be with the educational institutions like polytechnics and universities. And we can blame that to some extent on the decline of industry and the decline of the private sector. But isn't a part of that because of the difficulty in actually engaging these institutions, because of the nature of government control?
But let's take a step back. I think the first question is, are we getting the right quality of manpower coming out of our educational institutions? And I mean, what's our experience here as people leading organizations? When young people join our businesses, are they able to do what they should be able to do with the pieces of paper they hold?
I think, the problem that I see with that kind of question is these young people that are coming out of these schools, they actually don't have opportunities to exercise the skill set because of the
No, I think
level of unemployment.
I think you're copying out.
The answer is no.
Ranga,
It's
if,
no.
if I
It's
get
no.
if I get somebody with a degree from University X in Zimbabwe, and I get somebody with a similar degree, Bachelor of XYZ, from a university in South Africa and a university in the UK or anywhere else in the world,
Chalk and
Are they
cheese.
comparable?
are they comparable?
No, I actually don't believe. I actually think that Zimbabweans are still competitive. Okay, the way I look at the quality of
you
education is...
think so?
Yes. Yeah, and I think I've got some... I can actually put some empirical... okay, maybe of people that I know. So, okay, the way I view the education system and structure in Zim, its success has not been about the schools. It's been about the families that we come from. So you'd find that education was actually being driven from home. So you're encouraged to start, you're encouraged to do your books and all. I remember growing up, the first thing that an uncle and aunt will say to you when they visit you is like, "Waketa nambani," you know. So this is actually the culture that.
But Ranga,
Okay,
Ranga,
okay,
no,
wait, okay.
I'll give you my
Okay.
I'll give
Let
you
me
my
finish.
Let him make his point.
Okay, let me finish.
No, but
so okay.
that's what happens when you drink tea.
Okay, I'll take that. So, okay, just look at the number of people that are going out of the country and the kind of vibe or you get like someone can actually come out of Zim with no experience or with little experience. When they go into the real world and they get exposed, they tend to be high fly. It's because the work ethic is already in them, you know. Even that.
But wouldn't it be better if they actually knew how to do their job?
Or isn't that the cream of the crop that actually leaves, that has opportunities in the first world?
I'll give you an interesting anecdote from 3 weeks ago. In my personal life, I hired a supervisor for my farm. She comes from one of the top educational institutions for agriculture in this country. I got her CV. I was excited. I interviewed her. Brilliant. Seems clever. Come to work. I asked her, do you know how to drive a tractor? She's got a higher national diploma in agriculture. And her answer was no. And I said,
Were you surprised?
yes. I mean, how do you graduate with a diploma in agriculture not knowing how to drive a tractor? She's never driven a tractor. And I said to her, but how is that possible? How did you get your diploma? She says, well, for the 4 years or however many years she was at this institution, none of the tractors worked. So I said to her, so how did you pass your practicals on tractor maintenance? She said, oh, well, we just wrote them theoretically.
Yes.
So she does not know how to start a tractor, and she's going to be responsible for running a farm. Is this not a cause of concern?
So we are coming back to my point, which was saying they don't have, you know, the facilities are not there for them to get this exposure. But it's not like for someone who's gone through, whether it's a 3-year, 4-year program, of all the worries that you may have will be they can't drive a tractor. I'm sure. I mean, just give them a week.
No,
Just give them a week.
no. Driving and maintaining a tractor, setting implements.
No. Certainly, they'll be able to. They know the theory behind maintaining
This is
the tractor.
central to farm. Okay, if she can't drive a tractor, how does she operate a boom sprayer? Do you think she knows? How much do you think she knows about irrigation? Do you think she's actually had interaction with the water pump?
So I mean, if you talk to the farmers,
I am a farmer.
the white farmers, the former commercial farmers, they will actually tell you that the farming activity was not being driven by people from college.
So why do you have people from college
Okay,
then?
let me explain to you. So these guys were technical, so they would know the technical aspect of whatever soil testing and other things. But typically, farms would have these very old madalas who are there. That they can't calculate, they can't write some diagram as to how do you use the boom sprayer or so. But the guy can
They
just
know how to
come.
make-
They just know how
to make it work.
Yes. So that is actually the skill set that we have lost. The hands-on kind of person. So that is not a problem of education. Actually, it's actually a problem of exposure because we decimated farming. We decimated farming.
Education's role to create that exposure in a sandbox, right? Because if you're getting that exposure out in the wild on a farm,
On a real farm,
you can
with a
actually
real crop.
you can actually damage a tractor or combine harvester or pump, right? Whereas if you do it in the sandbox of an educational institution, right, you're not hurting anything. You're doing it under supervision and you're learning. So are you not making George's point that there's some problems with the product coming out of our education system?
So the facilities have actually deteriorated, and also even
Can I ask you a
everything
question?
around it. Okay,
Do you have some new graduates in your office?
I do.
Can they send emails that you understand?
Some do.
These are graduates in finance.
But you know, my frustration is actually less to do with their technical competence. It's more the attitude. And I think the attitude is being driven by...
I think you said we had a good work ethic from home.
No. So let me explain. It's actually frustration on their part. Like, okay, you can actually go through the schooling process and you know what? You're not sure whether you're going to... I mean, we thought when you went to school...
You're struggling to make your point.
No, okay. We thought when we went to school, life was tough. Just go and spend a day there and you see how tougher things are.
So the system is not working.
The system is not working.
When my father went to university at the UZ, he used to eat a 3-course meal twice a day, courtesy of the state.
I think then we used to have omnibus, and we used to have.
And so his
yeah,
only
so
focus
it's-
was
a lot has
learning,
changed, yeah.
was learning about geography. He's got a degree in geography. He just focused on learning about geography. He didn't have to worry about. He didn't even have to worry about where his clothes were washed. They went away somewhere and they came back clean.
So I don't think you should blame the quality of the graduates. You should blame the fact that the whole thing has deteriorated, and in it almost everything has just deteriorated. Don't you think so?
Maybe that's a place to end this discussion. Thank you for coming along. As usual, don't take us too seriously. If you think we know what we're talking about, we have no idea. You should probably have a glass of something interesting and have a rest. The feeling will pass. Otherwise, we hope we've inspired some thoughts, have some chats with you and yours, and we'd love to hear from you on social media, what you think about the things we've been discussing. Have a great weekend. Be good. If you can't be good at it.